A very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us on the Thursday edition of the show. I'm Yemi Adebayo. Well, tonight on the show, we'll take you surfing. We'll talk surfing on the show tonight. We have a special guest for you on the show, but I won't let the cat out of the bag just yet, so sit back and relax. We'll also talk about women's football on the show today. We'll take a look at the results and, of course, the aftermath of all the matches played and, of course, all the analysis of the two groups. We'll also travel abroad and talk about the English Premier League and also the big news coming out of Leicester City. Jamie Vardy will end, of course, his association with Leicester City. Of course, we'll talk about that all for you on the show tonight. It is a two-man show. My colleague Austin Okon-Akwan is suited and ready as we go along on this ride.
Spotted greetings to you, and of course, everyone joining us on the show tonight. It's always an action-packed world of sports. Yes, we said it when Leicester City went down, that the big question will be, will they be able to keep Jamie Vardy again? Not just Jamie Vardy, even Nigeria's Wilfred Ndidi, and now Jamie Vardy, the only surviving member of that unbelievable Premier League winning team, and now with this going down, is saying goodbye to them. Of course, we'll take a look at what's going on with women's football in Nigeria. You mentioned surfing. That's an interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to it, to see ways that we can, develop the sport, the potentials in it, prospects, challenges, because we say we have the markets, we have the people, we have the talent. So Nigeria should be, leading when talking about sports, not just football,
100%. All right, let's dive straight into it now. Joining us in our Lagos studio is Adewale Fawe. He is the president of the Nigeria Surfing Federation. Greetings to you, sir. Thanks for finding time to be with us on the show tonight.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's just dive straight into surfing. And let's start with the basics. What is the basic difference between surfing and swimming?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for bringing me here today. The difference between surfing and swimming is that swimming is a normal swimming that we do, and then while surfing is you swim at the same time you use a surfboard. That's the basic, that's the difference. With surfing, you have to have a surfboard, and you have to be able to do a lot of acrobatic with the board. That's the difference between surfing and then swimming.
All right, you corrected me in a way to let me know that you guys are on ground here in Nigeria and you have your activities, because some of us journalists are very skeptical about federation presidents that we think you only hear their names when it's time for elections. But you talked about the things you do in Takwa Bay and a few other places. So the question is, how do you think the young ones are embracing the sport?
Honestly, from what we see, anytime we are having a sport event, a surfing event in Takwa Bay, everybody wants to surf. And like I said, surfing is an addictive sport too. Most young people, when they embrace it, they really want to be part of it. It's something they can't stop. Sometimes some people forget their food, their lunch, their breakfast, just to go to inside the water and surf. So surfing has become part of their life. And then the day they don't do surfing, it's like something is wrong. That's how a lot of young people within the surfing community see surfing, and they really want to embrace it, and they love doing surfing all the time. Some even say surfing is their life.
All right. Before I hand you over to my colleague who's waiting, the notion about surfing being elitist, because, the equipment, the facilities, and the opportunities to get to some of the places where these things are happening, some people would say, oh, you have to be at a certain level in the society to be able to do that. And some of those facilities are not readily available. So what do you do as a federation to dispel that notion?
Yeah, for us, what we do as a federation, we also partner with some developing partner outside Nigeria. Like 2 years ago, the Pado, they are from France. They also donate about 30 surfing boards to the federation. and which up to now we're still using some of them at Takwa. So surfing is not just that expensive sport, but the only expensive area is this board, because without the board you cannot do surfing. And then because we are getting this kind of development partner around the world that are also supporting us, and some individuals too, who also bring their softboard and also donate their softboard. And we are also getting some support from some corporate organization, but not as we expected, not as we really want to see. But it's something that not just for the elites, anybody can participate. Yeah.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Good to have you on the show, and I'm so excited we're discussing surfing, the sort of conversation that people are like, oh, we do this sort of sports in Nigeria. Let us understand what we cover when we say the Nigeria Surfing Federation. Is it all forms of wave riding activities?
Yeah, it's all wave riding activities, and you have to have a surfboard, like I said. Without the wave, we cannot do surfing. So the wave is very essential to do surfing in Nigeria and in any part of the world.
Awesome. Because it's interesting that I saw young persons, how did you get to pump up the interest for surfing? Because I'll tell you, you speak to some children, they'll say, oh, I want to be a footballer or a basketballer, or I want to go into athletics. Surfing, how did you discover the talent?
The location where you do is Takwa, a lot of the tourist spot. A lot of tourists also come there, expatriates also come there, and they introduce the sport actually. And then that's why most of the locals, the young people within the local community pick up the interest. And they're doing better, honestly, because more training and more activities. Some of them are also traveled out to the country to represent Nigeria. And this February, I just got back from Côte d'Ivoire to meet other surfers from other parts of Africa. And that also is encouraging. Because when you also see other surfers from other parts of the world, other parts of the country, in Africa, coming and they are doing well, you want to be part of it. Want to be part of it.
I know you will not agree, but tell me, is surfing a dangerous sport?
Not 100% dangerous sport. Every sport is dangerous. Every sport is dangerous sport, but we also train some of our surfers about life-saving events, life-saving training, so that if any of the athletes have issue in the course of doing the sport, we have trained some of our athletes how to also come around and life-saving for those who are using the water. So it's part of what we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We cannot but try to understand what it is to keep this sort of sport going. Let us understand some of the challenges that you've encountered, and what are the prospects of surfing in Nigeria?
The prospect is so high, so great. This program, okay, like I said I was in Côte d'Ivoire in February, and I see a lot of young Africans, the way they embrace the sport and the vigor around the sport. I see this prospect is so great in Nigeria. Our little challenge is about funding.
Okay.
We have not been getting a lot of funding and support from the stakeholder here in Nigeria, the sports stakeholder here in Nigeria. However, we keep pushing and promoting the sport because we believe a lot of our youth can do us great and become superstars in the area of surfing in the world.
Okay, let's talk about, my colleague in his opening speech talked about challenges, prospects, and the gains. Talking about prospects, look, sports I don't believe in doing sports for doing sake. Do you think, with what you have seen, and you occupy a vantage position because you also double as a vice president of the African
Surfing Confederation.
So, do you see the talent in Nigeria as being able to get to the apex, to get to the top with the right support?
Absolutely. I see that. That's why I'm pushing for it. We are promoting the sport vigorously in our federation. Nigeria embrace sports with all their heart, and they want to excel. So that is always most of our young people within our federation and the sport. I can see Nigeria is going to become great within surfing in Nigeria. So I believe that it's just a matter of time. If we have all the necessary support, we'll get to the place.
Okay, so talk about the challenge now that I want to throw up. You don't see too many places. I know it's something that has to be done in the coastal areas.
Exactly.
But how many of these areas in the country is open to you, or that you're physically present?
Honestly, that's a big challenge. Most of the surfing location spots we have discovered, we have most of them in the Niger Delta region. But this security problem also is one of the things that's endangering us to go to that side of the location. And these are good locations that many experts really want to exploit. They want to come over, they want to come and see, they want to come and surf in that location. But some of the problem is that the security, is this safe for them? And this is a big challenge. But if we have all those challenges tackled, we can achieve a lot. There's a lot of potential with surfing in Nigeria. A lot.
Okay, what about competitions? What is our presence like on the continent? And I mean, let's even stay with the continent before we go global.
Yeah, that's where we have to. One of the things I think we were able to do within the Federation, for me being part of the executive of the Confederation, the African Surfing Confederation, because I have to leverage on that so that I can know what's happening within the continent. And that is also helpful. And it still boils down to funding, to be candid. Because sometimes we need to go to international events, continental events, and then we couldn't participate because we don't have the necessary support. This air ticket and moving from one place to another and going about with that is our funding. That's our challenge to get the kids, move them from one event within a continent to another. So these are the problems we have, and we believe that if we get the right support and funding, we will do more. We'll do more.
But by support, you're referring to what you can get from corporate bodies and the National Sports Commission.
Exactly.
So, in a way, you're saying you are not being fully embraced.
Yes, we have not been fully embraced, though we are getting some support, but not fully embraced.
But not fully embraced. Yeah. Okay, let me yield to my colleague. Also, who probably has a few more questions.
Yeah, I think he's done a good job, with the conversation. But I'm just wondering also, do we have women, ladies, girls, participating in surfing in Nigeria?
Yeah, we have ladies, we have girls, and more of them are showing interest too. That's one of the good things about the ladies showing more interest even in the sport. And one was to represent Nigeria in Senegal 2022. But because of passport, because she was using ECOWAS, this traveling passport, that's why she couldn't travel and meet with us in Senegal. The International Federation also, they emphasize the female genderness within the sport. They want the girls to be part of the sport too. And then we are pushing and promoting that as well. They want every event, they want the girls' position to be there and the main position to be there so that we can be gender sensitive.
That's the inclusion, conversation I wanted us to have. Let's wrap it up with coaching. What are we doing as regards, training the coaches, putting more exposure out there so that we get quality surfers that will eventually get to represent Nigeria in international competitions?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now in our federation, we have an Italian who is also training our kids. He's not a Nigerian, but he's been living in Nigeria. And he's doing it voluntarily. And, to be candid, he has helped a lot of our boys at the Takwabe who are representing Nigeria in some of their events outside the country. Because the training is very essential. Without the coach, we won't achieve anything. If not for his effort, most of these events we are also participating outside the country, we will not be able to achieve it. Because he's putting in all his energy and his strength to make sure that our athletes are well trained.
Okay, all right. Let me also throw this in as we wrap up this conversation. There might be a few people listening to you and they're interested. you said something that was a bit scary to me. You said you need to know how to swim first, before you can think about being a surfer,
Exactly.
and that's a problem for me. But for those who can actually swim, and they've seen the magic that people do. You talk about the acrobatics people do with the surfboard. They've seen all the things that people do with the surfboard, and they're like, I can already swim. All I just need is somebody to train me. So how easy is it? You talked about an Italian training. How easy it is to get indigenous trainers?
Yeah.
Do you have to go to Tarkwa Bay?
Exactly.
That's the only place you can get it for now.
For now, but we are hoping that we are so grateful to our president for the Lagos-Calabar coastline highway. It's going to open up a lot of surfing spots in that regard. Yeah, that route is going to be very, very useful to surfing. And surfing is very essential when it comes to sport tourism. That's one of the sports that have developed sport tourism around the globe. But Nigeria have not used that potential effectively. And most of our expatriates who really love surfing, they want to come to Nigeria because they know we have a lot of surf locations, surf places that they want to surf. But one problem is security. And we are hoping that when the security issue improves, and then that will also help them to allay their fear. And they can always come around and do surfing in Nigeria. Because the more expatriates, the more we invite a lot of surfers to come and surf with us in our location, the more the interest of the sport also will increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last question would be in terms of, still related to the question I asked, in terms of increased capacity. Now, you talk about Nigerians, and my colleague has said it many times. When we embrace a sport, we embrace it with our whole hearts.
Exactly.
And the kind of people that we are as Nigerians, when we do something, we always want to excel.
Exactly.
We tend to emerge as champions. So in terms of capacity, when people are listening to you now and a lot of people start coming for those training, will some of these things not be a challenge?
No, we have, like I said, indigenous coach that are also always at the Tarkwa Bay. Every weekend from Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So the numbers will not be a challenge?
No, it won't be a challenge. We are also working on organizing a national event training program. And we invite some of these athletes from other parts of the world, other locations, and bring them to Tarkwa Bay, train them, pending we're able to open up other locations as well. Our main challenge is to make sure we also go to all those soft locations around the coastline, and train most of these athletes around there too. Most of the locals, the young people around that region, they are idle. But with surfing going to them, they will embrace the sport and they will get engaged.
Okay, I think that's a good place to leave it on the show. Mr. Adewale Fawe, President of the Nigerian Surfing Federation, I want to thank you for your time on the show today. Hopefully, we'll do this some other time, and all the best to your federation.
Okay, you are also invited to come to our location to come and do
I don't know how to swim. But thank you for that invitation. We need to go on a break right about now. When we return from that break, we'll be talking about things happening on the domestic scene. The women will be our top priority. We'll talk about the Nigeria Women's Football League, and of course, we'll travel abroad to talk about the English Premier League. We'll go for that break and return for more Sports Tonight. All right, welcome back. We're done with the conversation around surfing. We've made a switch. Damla Lonifade joins us now as we take a look at all the things happening in the fast-paced, money-speeding, rewarding world of sports. Damla, good to have you on the show.
It's good to be here. Such an interesting day. Good to be here.
It was. All right, so in a few seconds, your thoughts on surfing. Few seconds.
I think the president did a good job of selling the sports to as many people that do not know. There is a question you asked about being elitist, and I think that's the mindset. Generally in this part, once the equipment to run a sport is expensive, it's considered
labeled.
It's labeled automatically. So I think he did a good job. I think more of what they need is to get this information across better. And I think they also need to expand the places where people can engage the sport. To have a single sport in a nation like ours is a start, but we need to put in more effort. Those efforts are not limited to the Federation.
All right, not limited to the Federation. All right, let's move on now and talk about the ladies. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the ladies. I'll go across in a bit to show you the results. Match day 13 for the ladies. Just one more match to wrap it all up before we go to the top 6. And Damilola, some amazing results that we have here. Let's start with Group A, shall we? In Group A, Nasarawa Amazons defeated Edo Queens by a lone goal. Abia Angels and Remo Stars ladies was 2 apiece, 2-2. The game ended. Dana's ladies defeated Heartland Queens by a lone goal. Same scoreline in the game between Confluence Queens and Ekiti Queens. All of these matches in Group A. Let's flip over quickly and look at Group B. There you have it, Group B. Bayelsa Queens defeated Rivers Angels by a lone goal. Niger Rattles went all the way to defeat Delta Queens by 2 goals. It was 2-0. Then, of course, Imbom Angels defeated FC Robo Queens by a lone goal. Then the game between Benue Queens and Adamawa Queens ended, honors shared 2-2. 2-2, the game ended. Now, let's show you what it looks like after match day 13. The table, we look at Group A and we look at Group B. This is what it looks like. And 3 teams going to the top 6, you already know that. And so after 13 matches in Group A, sitting pretty, Edo Queens with 32 points, and it looks like, they've gotten that top spot, but top spot doesn't really matter because you're going to the top 6. Anything can happen after that. Nasarawa Amazons, Remo Stars ladies, and Abia Angels, in that position. It looks like the top 3 is sorted here, and of course, the team in that position that you don't want your team to be in is Confluence Queens. All right, let's look at Group B table. And you have Bayelsa Queens, 33 points, Rivers Angels following, Niger Rattles following, and FC Robo Queens. Of course, that's the top 4. That's what it looks like. And of course, Bayelsa Queens with 33 points. Benue Queens, of course, with a goals deficit of -28, not looking good, with just a miserly 5 points. Damilola, quickly, before I yield to Austin, there's really a lot of talk about one group being tougher than the other. I don't want to put words into your mouth. Which one is it, and your thoughts? And it looks settled, because we're looking at the way it is, one more game probably won't make any difference.
For Group A, of course, that's settled. We have the Super 6 already. But for Group B, I think the kind of battle you expect there is what we're getting. I remember when the season was going to start, I was there, and I mentioned that the top 2 teams will be at the top. And I was thinking that FC Robo Queens, Delta Queens, and probably Niger Rattles will be in the running for the top 6. But unfortunately, Delta Queens seems to have fallen off. They have fallen off, not seems, because with just 14 points, they're done. I think the only slot remaining is between Niger Rattles and Robo Queens. Robo Queens' defeat yesterday was quite a bad loss for them, because that's what has put them in this difficult situation. They have to win their last game and hope that Niger Rattles does not get a good result. So it is what it is. Edo Queens, I was actually surprised that they finally lost. I didn't expect that they would lose at Nasarawa, but Nasarawa needed that win badly, and they got it.
All right. The teams that are already through to the playoff is what you're going to see right about now. And Damilola has explained for Group A, already set to Group B, 1 spot left to be decided. And you have Edo Queens, Nasarawa Amazons, Remo Stars ladies, Bayelsa Queens, Rivers Angels, all through to the playoffs. So those are the teams through to the playoff. And so let me yield to Austin quickly to sum things up for us and his thoughts. Were you surprised that Edo Queens lost? And can anything change? Do you think these teams will take the form of the regular season into the top 6?
Yeah, I think so. But Edo Queens will be beating themselves, because I'm sure they would have wanted to finish the regular season unbeaten. So with that loss now, Bayelsa Queens remains the only team that is yet to lose a game in the NWFL. And what a way to, confirmed their superiority by beating Rivers Angels. That's a derby all day, every day. And for women's football in Nigeria, it's a sort of fixture that really gets us talking. But yes, also our Remo Stars ladies, they are safe, but I was still surprised that Abia Warriors, could hold them. And what a way to confirm that they really want to play at the Super Six. Niger Rattles, they aren't getting the sort of praise that they deserve. To beat Delta Queens away from home, to keep Super Six hopes alive, and now threatening FC Robo Queens. When did we start talking about Niger Rattles in women's football in Nigeria? About 4 or 5 years ago. And now they are trying to let us know that they can chill with the big girls. I think that's a fantastic result for them. And I hope that they go all the way so that we can have something new to talk about in the Super Six. Well, since that, that's sort of what happens is beating Edo Queens wasn't much of a big deal, because that's a team that, yes, on their own, they also deserve some respect when we're talking about women's football in Nigeria. But in everything that I've seen till this match day, the women's game is so beautiful and competitive. We see away wins almost every week, and it gets to a point that now we say, look, the conversation should be the private sector coming to it. Let's see ways, particularly as we approach the Super Six, that we can give more clarity to women's football in Nigeria, more support. Shout out to Kule Shoname and what he's doing with Remo Stars ladies. We want more persons to come into it, and the NSA needs to lead that charge, Yemi.
Okay, all right. So let's move on, and we're done with women's football for now. Let's go to Africa and talk about a man that gladdens your heart, Austin. You've always waxed lyrical about this man. Patrice Motsepe, of course, is in the news. He's been talking, and of course, talking about funding, something that a lot of people think it's the problem. I'm going to point out something to you later on, and you will discover that those two countries somehow do not have those issues that Patrice Motsepe will be talking about. But funding is very critical to growth. Football development. Political instability too has troubled Africa, and is still troubling Africa. The uncertain terrain, sort of. But what do you say to the issue of the funding for sports being in the hand of politicians, corporate sector not really heavily involved?
I think it's as simple as when you look at the countries in Africa where sport is enjoying corporate support, you have to look at the size of those economies and the size of their market in terms of corporate participation in business. And I mean, you can easily mention South Africa, you mentioned the North Africans.
So don't let me say what I want to say, you've said it already.
I mean, it's as simple as that. I've always said this, and that's the reality of Africa. We can sit down here and dance around every idea in our head based on our exposure. But the reality is that the African economy is not big enough for the private sector to run sport alone at this moment. What we need to, however, design is a system where government is still involved, but government does not impose itself too much.
And there is transparency.
And then there is transparency.
Yes.
And then there is accountability, where government money is not anybody's money.
Yes, it's not our money.
You must account for it. That's what we need to design. But because if we tell us that government should pull us sports and want to do private, then we'll stop doing sports on this continent. There's nothing. I can assure you of that.
I agree. Also, I'm very sure you will make us listen to Patrice Motsepe, but the views that Damilola and I have both echoed. Do you agree? The issue of funding, very critical in African football.
Yeah, it does. It is critical, but Damilola, I think we've got the economy. We've got what it takes to drive it. What we lack is the will, and then the people. Now look at this CAF president that we have. Any opportunity he has, he talks business. It talks income. It talks revenue. It talks about commercializing African football. It's about the person. It's about leadership. Everything rises and falls on it. We've had CAF presidents before him, but how many people put attention on creating a market for Africa to make people even know that there's a viable market for our football on the continent. Patrice Motsepe is leading the charge. Now, what is slowing him down, Damilola? It is the leadership we have in Africa. The man has said it. Isn't it a shame that countries like Kenya, even sometimes Ghana, they don't even have a good playing ground for their national teams at the top level, Damilola? The top level. It is when things like this start happening that makes us think we don't have the economy. No, we do. But we need people to drive it, people with the right vision, people with the knowledge, the passion, people who understand what it means to go the distance. And that's what Patrice Motsepe is doing, because he's a businessman. He knows, he has seen the figures. He knows that FIFA is coming close to CAF because of our numbers, because they see an economy that we don't see. Look at what they're doing with the slam track. Look at what America is doing every day with their sports to contest with Europe. That's what Patrice Motsepe is trying to tell us. If we don't identify our market, these guys will come into it, identify it, and we'll start paying them for them to even make money. You know, well, let's listen to Patrice Motsepe. It's all about funding of football in Africa.
What will have a big impact in making sure that some of the best African players stay in Africa? We've got to pay them well. We have to pay them competitively. And I know from my experience, we used to compete with Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, Finland, Greece, and would ask the players, okay, fine, how much are you earning there? And we can pay you. They would much rather be in Africa because they would like to be with their family. The food is nicer here anyway. And to be with your communities and your friends is something that's very fulfilling. But so it's important to make sure that we pay our players very well. It's also important, talking about the match that took place during the week. You know, I'm proud of what many of the African clubs are doing at huge sacrifice. And some of them at huge financial sacrifice because they don't have the resources. And some of the families have to use their own money. And I'm thankful for that and proud of that. But what I like is the quality of African football is consistently improving. And I'm going to look with keen interest when the 4 African clubs compete with the football clubs from the rest of the world in June and July. And because the success of club football has a huge impact on the success of your national team and how your national team performs as well at FIFA competitions. So the future looks great, and I'm proud of the foundation that has been laid, because success doesn't come overnight.
CAF President Patrice Motsepe. And look, Yemi, you said it. I love listening to him because, Damilola, what this man does is he keeps telling us, look, we can do it, we can do it, we can do it. He started by saying welfare. If you pay your players well, I was doing a research 2 weeks ago about why players don't stay in the NPFL, Damilola. Simply because they don't pay them well. Look at Aqua United on the brink of relegation. 4 seasons ago, they were champions. But how many of the players stayed? If you look at the Premier League, everybody's just thinking of ways to even go to Libya, to go to Bangladesh, to go and play football. But if we say, okay, we have XYZ amount of money, we have the right persons to run it, and we have a will to make a change, Damilola, won't there be change?
Austin, I like the question you're throwing at me, but if we spend 2 hours to discuss this issue, I'm not sure we'll agree on certain things. However, let me point out this. I agree with you absolutely that the potential for the African economy to make sport vibrant is there. But my point is, as we speak, we do not have it. Do we have the potential? Do we have the capacity to make the right investment to get there in a few years? Maybe if we get the right people in place. But you see, when you also talk about paying players, you also have to ask the private man that wants to pay players, what's his profit? Nobody is going
what
to...
Mileage
what mileage is he going to get? We have private individuals in the Nigerian PFL. Are they getting profit for playing in the league? Those are the questions we need to ask. Until you can fix that, and that's where the economy comes in, you cannot start talking about welfare. You're jumping the gun. I say it again. Mosepe can say what he's saying because he's in a space where he's working. Bring another man from Africa to come and run CAF. The discussion will change because his reality does not support what he wants to tell you. But you see, there is no way African sport can be profitable if you don't first engage the leadership on the continent. And I'm talking about political leadership, not sports leadership. Because the sport is relying largely on politicians. On politicians.
On the goodwill from politicians.
Goodwill, thank you. Not even because they are profit-driven. And we must fix that. When we fix that, then the conversation
For instance...
But the potentials are there, Austin. I totally agree with you.
A privately owned club is about to win the NPFL. Can anybody conveniently tell me what it will get?
Thank you.
For winning.
For winning.
So how do you budget?
No,
how do you plan?
There is one thing about what he will get. There is one thing about how much did he invest compared to what he's getting.
That's even on another level. Well, Damilola has rightly said if we begin to look at it, 2-3 hours will not be enough. But these are important issues.
Before we go, let's just put a bit of hope out there because there's been countries that we thought that they cannot do anything good with their football. But Patrice Motsepe just said it that with club football, our national team football can shine.
It's true.
Tipi Mazembe with Congo is a good example. And they did so well with the club. Simba of Tanzania is a good example. And these people don't even have the sort of financial strength that we have in some countries in West Africa. But they had a will and they got it. What is Morocco doing? Egypt doing? You said let's not mention South Africa. But we need to start somewhere. And we need to start with the right people. We lack the leadership.
All right, I agree that we lack the leadership. And I also like to let you know that we're pressed for time. So let's move on the show and talk about CAF club competitions. And it is no surprise that you have 2 Egyptian clubs, 2 South African clubs playing themselves. And it just buttresses the point that we are talking about the stability in those countries and the viability of the economy of those 2 countries. It tells you the story. And then you have its semi-final second leg fixtures. Halali up against Mamelodi Sundowns. Aggregate is goalless. Pyramids and Orlando Pirates. Same situation. Are we going to have 2 Egyptian clubs in the final, 2 South African clubs? One of both. Time will tell. We'll see with this one. All right. Let's move on from this to Austin's backyard. That's the English Premier League. And Damilola told me off camera that it seems as if there's been a shift. Arsenal has forgotten about the league. Only Mikel Arteta talking about putting pressure on Liverpool. The players have totally forgotten about the league, and they're not even able to keep leads anymore. At the end of the day, the Gunners played a 2-2 draw with Crystal Palace. Damilola, before I yield to Austin, I know their minds are on PSG, but if they play the way they played, they're not going to beat PSG.
The point is they won't.
You're so sure they won't?
I am so sure they won't. Because I said it to you, and you said it already. The players have switched. They know that this league, even if you die on that Premier League pitch, they're not going to win the title. It's lost. So I think individually, they would rather save themselves because those are the games at this level a player wants to play. Nobody remembers your performance against Crystal Palace if you have a blind eye against PSG. That's the one that sells it. That's the one that everybody celebrates. And I think for those players, Arteta is also just keeping the front. He has a job to do. He's the manager. He must send the right message as far as the Premier League is concerned. But I think Arsenal will not be that poor. Yesterday was quite disappointing, particularly the way they gave up those 2 goals. I mean, you don't take 2 leads at home against Crystal Palace. With all due respect to Palace. But I can assure every Arsenal fan, for once, I'm hopeful.
For once?
For once.
Damilola is very hopeful.
Against PSG, for once.
All right, let me get to Austin. I know we don't really have time. I don't know if we're going to be able to listen to the managers because I'm looking at the time. But your thoughts, were you disappointed with the result? I'm quite disappointed with the results. Some players who probably may not get a chance to start against PSG, I thought that was a window of opportunity to show the manager I should be starting. Yeah. Some of them fluffed that opportunity.
You know, I mean, you can still tell that not having a point man is affecting this Arsenal team because this sort of game, that's what a striker can just take upon themselves. Oh, we made a mistake. It's now 2-2. Let me try and just get a goal. Let's see if we can win this, you know. But it's not happening with Arsenal. If you take the loss to Villa, at the Emirates Stadium, a strikeout that made a difference. If you go back to the Newcastle game in the FL Cup, a strikeout that made a difference. Same with this Crystal Palace game. That was Arsenal's 13th draw this season, and that's not good. That's why I always tell you that these draws, just keep them. Imagine these draws 13, let's say they had 7, they probably would be competing for the league title. But these draws are not just good. And I say to Mikel Arteta that you need to sign a striker all the time. It would have made a difference. What I say is sad about the result that Arsenal dropped the standards. Let's listen to Arteta.
Yeah, disappointed with the results and with the performance as well. I think we never got the consistency in many areas to completely dominate the game. We always had the feeling that, yeah, we had the ball, we had possession, we went in front twice, but the game wasn't grabbed, it wasn't dominated and controlled in the way that we normally do, because we were below the standards in some areas. And yeah, when you are not at your best, but you are 2 times ahead, you have to be able to see the game off, and we weren't able to do it, especially with what happened in the second goal.
That's it. Mikel Arteta straight up is disappointed. Damilola, look, everyone will say Arsenal is a team that should come out, beat Crystal Palace all day, every day, but you could tell that the team is also getting tired. Don't you agree?
I think so, and that's why I told I believe that the players are trying to save some energy. Is the run into the season? They've lost the title. There is no need killing yourself in the Premier League. I think they're trying to save their energy. They are trying to conserve some of their strength for the PSG game. And like I mentioned, not having a striker is also costing them, because sometimes in a game, you just don't want to run, just want to go route one so that you just push the opponent back, and they don't have that kind of player.
All right,
so
Damilola,
no plan B.
Sorry to butt in before we go, because we're pressed for time. I don't want to get kicked out of the studio. Jamie Vardy, what can you say? Jamie Vardy's leaving Leicester City after 13 years. You can't write the story of Leicester City without Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, you can't. I'm still waiting for the other news. Is it that he's going to another club or he's retiring?
He says he's not retiring, but he has to leave.
I think he has to leave, but he probably should leave and go home. Just go to the boardroom. But on a more serious note, he has paid his dues. He has served the club, a diligent servant. In recent time, Jamie Vardy and Leicester,
synonymous.
It's just like saying the same thing with 2 different names.
Wow. All right, I'll say. I mean, what can I say about Jamie Vardy? True servant, gave his all. I don't know what the reasons are, but he's 38, and so maybe the club is thinking of going into a different direction. But all the best to Jamie Vardy. He has truly given his all for Leicester City.
That's right, 13 years, you know, and I said it at the start of the show, only surviving member from that Premier League, you know, winning team. I think he has been loyal to them. They love him so much. I saw, you know, Leicester City fans, you know, saying that nobody will fill the shoes of Jamie Vardy, and I totally agree. But he's still keeping quiet. Let's see where he's going. Maybe he might just play one more season in the Premier League and then drop off to the Championship and retire. 38 is a lot of years, you know, just to be 40. What else can he do other than stay with a beautiful game? That's the show. I mean, London, man, Austin, Okodakpan, in everything you do, remember, keep talking sports. Bye for now.
All right, it's a wrap here in Lagos, but very delighted to thank Damilola Onifade for his time on the show.
Pleasure being here, Yemi. And maybe my last recommendation, Arsenal can consider Vardy.
That's a funny one. Well, a very good way to end the show tonight. Hopefully you've enjoyed everything we brought to you tonight. We'll do this again tomorrow. I'm Yemi Adebayo. Bye-bye now.